Hello everyone, Happy New Year. First of all, I hope 2024 is joyful and prosperous for you and your families. I'm at the site, almost, of Denstone Station in the Churnet Valley, a very flooded Churnet Valley. And I'm going to take a stomp up the former North Staffordshire Railway from Denstone Station up through Alton Towers, which is famous obviously for the theme park now, but it was famous as a seat of the Earl of Shrewsbury. We're going to have a look at that station, loads of remains there. And then we're going to stomp on further to a sleepy village called Oakamoor, which is sleepy now, but it wasn't always. It was a very, very significant village in the history of both the UK and North America. At the end there, we get to Oakamoor Tunnel, so we're going to try and have a little look at that, although it is private land. And that'll be the end of the walk. Need to stop meeting like this, and then by the fifth time it's just awkward, isn't it? So here are the remains of Denstone Station. Now here was the station building, so if you look at some of the pictures you can see that there was a station building there. The crossing went straight across there, obviously that house wasn't there. That one you'll recognise from some of the footage and some of the photos. It's a beautiful platform. Strange, you don't tend to see platforms like that, you know, with the stone that's like a, you know, like an old farm wall or something. So we're going to be walking in that direction, but I have just spotted a notice board, so I'm just going to have a quick look at that. Let's have a look. It's got a picture of how it used to look. Unfortunately not, but there you go. That's where we are. That's where we're going to start this walk. So it went on to a place called Rochester in that direction. From there, it went into Uttoxeter. There's a junction at Rochester, which you can see some footage of now. That goes, or that line went off into Ashbourne. Up here, Alton Towers Station, and then we're going on to Oakamoor. Okay, so we're walking away from, oh, it's wet and muddy, but here we go, here's a photo. So you see that, that's the station building that isn't there now. Platforms, there's the crossing, you see that, you can recognise that building. Right there in the distance. I'm not sure I've ever seen a mainline railway, which this was. It was double track the whole way. That close to a graveyard. There's a nice church there. Okay, right. Get my waders out. So this line was built in 1849. I am just in puddles here. In 1849. To join up a place called North Road, which is basically just outside Macclesfield, so kind of Manchester way, and come all the way down through Leek and places like that, and Alton Towers obviously, on through Denstone Station to Uttoxeter, where it joined up with the Derby Crew line. So it was basically another way of connecting Manchester and Derby, and Manchester and the Midlands in general, and then from beyond there, London. Now during that sort of railway mania time of probably 1830 on to about 1860, where railways were just being built left, right and centre. Obviously there was so many bids for different railways that sometimes it would take a while to get stuff through Parliament. But this one was passed very, very quickly. And the reason for that is maybe evidenced by how wet it is. So just outside Denstone Station we've got a beautiful, beautiful bridge. I'm sure I've driven over this a few times actually to get to Alton Towers. So we take the kids there sometimes. But yeah, lovely. Bit of red brick at the top. Sorry, I got distracted by the bridge. The reason, oh my goodness, the reason why passing this one was simple was generally someone put in a bid to build a railway. They'd have to knock stuff down, you know, they'd have to buy up land, they'd have to go through farmers' fields, or even when they're obviously building stations, they'd have to knock down townhouses, they'd have to knock down pubs. Famously, the Great Central took out hundreds and hundreds of these when they built that. So obviously that would involve some legal wranglings. Whereas with this one, what I'm walking on now is a disused railway, but before it was a railway, it was actually a canal. It was the Frogmore to Uttoxeter Canal, which was completely ill-fated, didn't didn't really work, didn't get a lot of traffic on it. And so when they closed that, obviously the North Staffordshire Railway put in their bid to build this railway and went, look, bosh, we can just build it on top of it. So that's what they did. They filled it in and they built the railway on top of it, therefore bypassing any legal wranglings about knocking down houses or going through people's land. There are a couple of sections on this line where the canal kind of skirts off, and I'm hoping you can see some remains of that. I've seen it on old maps, which doesn't mean it's there now, obviously, but you know, one can hope. It's not too bad underfoot now. The sun's coming up there. It's been really grim in terms of rain. You know, all the fields are all flooded and stuff, but actually it's a pretty nice day today, so I've picked a good day. I've got a confession to make. I didn't pick a good day. I've already done this. I did it on New Year's Eve. I started at Oakamoor at the end and walked it in the dark, terrifying under moonlight. And then I turned around and I walked back in the light. And then I deleted all the files. And when I managed to retrieve them, they're all corrupted. So I've actually had to come out and do it again. So just a 10-mile round trip walk just chucked in the bin. But there you go. It's a nice walk, so I shouldn't mind doing it again. Though I was sort of gutted at the time. Look at the mist there. So that's the River Churnet, not that. That's a poor bloke's field. What winds around there, that tree line, that's the River Churnet, which is where this valley gets its name. So I'm outside Denstone now. I've been sort of, you know, walking for 10 minutes and we are in the middle of nowhere now. But that's what I love about this part of the world, is it doesn't take long to suddenly be, you know, absolutely in the middle of nowhere. But this line closed in 1965, this section. So from Uttoxeter, it went through Rochester Station, which is now basically, if you've ever driven down the A50, if you're local, between Derby and Stoke, you see those huge JCB warehouses. That's basically where the station was. It then went up through Denstone, through Alton Towers, through Oakamoor, where we're walking to, through that tunnel, and then the other side of that actually becomes a heritage line, and it is actually open now, the Churnet Valley line, and it's actually a really, you know, a really top end heritage railway now. So here's a bit of ballast remaining, you can just see that. Okay. This is the Frogmore and Uttoxeter Canal then. So this is where it skirts off and it goes round and it comes back on. So they didn't completely follow the canal for its entirety. It does kind of weave in and out, but in terms of the land that they needed to purchase to get approval, it's all in the same ballpark basically. Just north of Oakamoor, there's something called the Oakamoor Sand Sidings. There's another bridge there. As you can see, double track for its entirety, this line, which is rare for very rural lines. You know, normally they'd have a single line and then they'd have, you know, double track in the stations for passing points and stuff like that. But I wonder if the allowance for double track was down to the fact that there was a big canal here already, so they, you know, they had the land to build a double track line on. I'm not entirely sure about that. But like I say, it went in 1965. The bit north of Oakamoor Tunnel went in 1988, which is why, because it had gone so late, you know, a lot of the infrastructure remained, which is how they managed, obviously, then to build that Churnet Valley heritage line on that. We're on quite a high embankment now, and I've got to say, I'm not gutted by that, because look at that post down there. You can tell how high that water is. There's the sun coming through, beautiful. Now this section here, this, looking at old maps, this is all the canal, but it widened there. So I'm wondering whether that was some form of canal basin or maybe a passing point for barges and stuff. But that shape is exactly how it was going back to the 1900s. So this line had already been built, the canal had been closed, but the shape was how it was then. So, and it says on the old maps, it says old canal. So I'm wondering if that was, you know, some kind of passing point there. Here we go, look. Dreamland for the duckies, probably not so much for the farmer. Nearly tripped over that. Just a random bit of track, buried. So you can hear the river churn it there. That is right close to the top of its banks at that point. And here we go. That to me looks like a natural gorge. Although that said, there are rocks at the bottom, but obviously they could have fallen, you know, just under their own weight. But I'm wondering if this was blasted out a little bit. That seems natural to me, but I'm pretending like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to that, when I really don't. I'm not far out of Alton Towers now. In fact, if you go over to the other side of the river there and then up over the top, you'd basically be getting into Alton Towers theme park at that point. Now, the reason I love walking, many reasons. One is the health benefits, obviously, and one is just, you know, getting out, clearing your mind. But another is the history, particularly the history of the UK, because it's incredible, because it doesn't matter where you go. So take this, for instance, it's a beautiful valley, and it's a nice old railway line to walk. So I looked into the information on it and found, you know, little nuggets here and there. But then I found that in Alton Towers, you know, there's the Oriental Garden. I don't know if you've ever been. There's an Oriental Garden in Alton Towers, and you go over it on these big cable cars. So, do you know what I mean? If you're not into heights, best of luck. Well, actually, that site where that Oriental Garden is known as Slane Hollow. And the reason it's known as Slane Hollow is because in the year 716, the Kingdom of Wessex marched up here to attack the Kingdom of Mercia. And they met in that little Oriental Garden, basically. Do you know what I mean? Sat on a bench with a cup of coffee. But the reason it's called Slane Hollow is because they basically just butchered each other, and there was no winner. Not that I ever think there's a winner in war anyway, but there was no winner. They basically just massacred each other, and that's why it's called that. So here we go. Another nice piece of infrastructure. The river's flowing quite fast, and as you can see, this was double track. So there's your second line, and you've got your blue engineering brick there. So we'll keep following the line. Look at this. So I'm still on the track bed, and look at the mist. Just looks lovely, but the flooding's crazy, isn't it? Oh, we've got a cyclist. Move out of the way so he doesn't do his ding-a-ling-a-ling bell at me. There's another bridge. Almost missed that one with all the ivy on it. Now, can you just make out Alton Castle there? Look at that. Just sticking out. That is real Hogwarts style, isn't it? You're a wizard, Harry. Here we go. Getting closer now. Just outside the village of Alton. That looks incredible, doesn't it? It looks like almost like a Saint Germain sort of, you know, French chateau. So Alton Station, which we're coming up to, was opened with the rest of the line in 1849, but it was opened just as a halt, basically. And then the Earl of Shrewsbury, who owned Alton Towers, he got involved with a list of demands for how the station was built. I don't know why he's getting involved, but he wanted extra long platforms so he could show off to his mates. There's obviously an insecurity there. And then he wanted this big parcel hall, he wanted this X, Y, Z, and then he wanted his own pathway out of the station up into the Alton Towers. He didn't want to be mucking around with us plebs. So compared to the other stations on the line, they're all beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it looks very different. It's like an Italianate design. Because basically they had local designer that designed all the stations and did a grand job. But obviously that wasn't going to be enough for the Earl of Shrewsbury. So he demanded they brought in another. So they brought in another designer to kind of, you know, make it that little bit more special for him. There's another bridge here. It looks lovely, like all the stonework and stuff. They built stuff to such high spec, didn't they? Okay, so this is where the sidings start to come off. That's how close we are now to Alton Station. The sidings went off and then actually came back on again about where that dog walker is, that red bin. And there was something called a colour factory. When you have a look on old maps, that's what it shows itself as, a colour factory. You know, dyeing clothes or making dye. That's what I assumed anyway, that it would, you know, I saw colour factory on the old map and I thought, oh, a dye factory then. Because we are not far from the potteries of kind of Stoke and Newcastle under Lyme and places like that, so they would have needed to have made dye, obviously, to colour the pots. So here we go, here's like a little platform structure then. So this is where they'd have been loading goods and trainers by the look of it. And you can see from the shape of the platform, then the track came back to join this line here, and that up there, which we'll get a closer look at in a minute, that was that colour factory. And here we go, that's a railway structure as well, as you can see at the end of the platform there. And then this track rejoined, and then we go under what is a bridge or a tunnel. The debate starts. And there's obviously that colour factory. There's much debate whether things are tunnels or bridges. I guess it's sort of a matter of opinion really. But I think if you watched the video that me and Phil did when we were up in Yorkshire, we made a video about is it a tunnel or is it a bridge? Everyone disagrees on different ones, but I think this is a bridge personally, but I'll let you be the judge of that. You can just make out the fencing there, that's Alton Station. Became Alton Towers Station in 1924 when the Earl of Shrewsbury and the family, his descendants, actually sold Alton Towers, and Alton Towers then became a tourist attraction. It's quite long, isn't it, actually, thinking about it. It's a beautiful structure though, amazingly well made, as everything the Victorians made was, to be honest. Now on this platform, there were structures on this platform as well, and I'm pretty sure that actually if we skirt up, that actually there was a line that came in this side. Yeah, you can make that out now. You just make out the edge of the platform. So this would have been, there you go, this would have been a siding here that came in, and there were station buildings here as well. Obviously the station buildings that side have remained, but they did have them this side as well. And here was the access to the station. Now this was the access to the station here, and the stairs the other side, because I guess this tunnel or bridge actually acted as a crossing point as well for people that were, you know, getting off one train and getting on another, going in the other direction. But when you get to the other side of the station, you'll see that actually the Alton Towers gang had their own access in and out. But that's incredible. And such a great job of preserving it. You can stay in it now actually. It's a I'm not sure if it's an Airbnb, but you know, the equivalent. Look at that. There we go. And there's that 3-storey Italianate station building. Because obviously the Earl of Shrewsbury had his own waiting room. He couldn't be waiting with people like us. And even the chimneys, look how impressive the chimneys look. Incredible. And another thing is look at the length of these platforms. They just go on and on. So for context, obviously there's the start of them at the bridge stroke tunnel. That's his personal entrance there, up and off into the Alton Towers land. And we just keep walking and we just keep walking, and these do not stop. Well, they do stop, but it takes a while. There's your engineering brick, and then those big pieces of stone there. Like I say, you've got the siding the other side of that. Double track, but incredibly long platforms. In those days, it was all about first impressions, apparently. I guess it kind of is now in a way. But what he would do was obviously he would wait on the platform, or he would have his servants more likely wait on the platform. And people would arrive into this big grand station with these really hella long platforms that were getting very little use, if we're honest. But it was just making a statement of power, I guess, a statement of wealth. Look at me and my platforms. That changed in the 70s, didn't it? That meaning. Look at me and my platforms. So there you go again, looking back. If we come across here, you can see where the lines come off and gone into that siding there as well. The house, Alton Towers, was sold off in 1924. It was basically open to the public as gardens, and also a part of the house was open and stuff like that. It didn't become a theme park like it is now till the 70s, I think. But at that point, this went from being Alton Station, serving the village of Alton and also Alton Towers, to just being called Alton Towers. They changed the name of the station to Alton Towers in 1924 because it became a tourist attraction then, and so people would flock from all over the country to come and have a look at the stately home. In the end, that kind of died out, unfortunately, so there wasn't enough traffic. There was a bit of freight coming through, but most of that was going the other way. Wasn't coming to Uttoxeter. Oh, get that sun out your face. So that was the end of the line. And then what happened was, they had such a problem with vandalism and stuff in the station remains, people going in there starting fires, that actually the Staffordshire County Council bought it and did it up, and obviously made it secure and stuff like that so people couldn't break in, and that's why it looks so nice now. So here we go, so here's a crossing going up there, and I'm just thinking here, is that the canal bridge? It could well be. I know that looks like a ridiculous thing to say because of how low it is, but obviously this is all infilled. So you imagine this is dug out. I mean, it looks that kind of era, doesn't it? And that looks like a canal bed. Look at the reeds and stuff in it. That looks like a canal bed to me. I think that's the bridge for the old Frogmore Uttoxeter Canal.